everyone, and welcome to Rethinking Payroll Integrations. But I just thought first I would ground this discussion in a bit of recent research. So I don't know if you all saw recently this interesting statistic from IMM that shows that 1/3 or over of payroll leaders now manage payroll across 6 or more countries. You know, obviously Multiplier as a global payroll platform, we're well aware of this. But what many people don't realize is that this complexity is huge. Like the fragmentation is making it so hard for teams to stay productive. It's introducing risks and potential errors, and it's just getting in the way of finance teams being able to access the insights they need. So, you know, this is like a super timely conversation. I'm really excited to be joined by these speakers who can shed further light on everything from these different perspectives. So I'd love to introduce everyone. Let's start with Russell Webb.
Hi everyone, I'm Russell Webb. I am head of sales for a UK-based payroll consultancy called Phase 3. I've been in the payroll industry for about 9 years now, 2 years at my current role, and I was with ADP working on global payroll for about 7 years. So I've got some nice experience in working across multiple countries with payroll, and I have a newsletter called Payroll and Pastries where I explore the latest changes and updates and things going on in the payroll world.
Amazing, thank you. Soumya?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Soumya Murthy. I'm a director of product management at Multiplier, but my true romance with payroll began, I would say, 12 years back when I was an entrepreneur. I ran payroll in multiple countries. And then in my prior role at Intuit, I led the QuickBooks online and desktop payroll solutions. And I'm very excited to be here.
Amazing, very excited too. Lastly, I'd love to hear from you, Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Nair. I am a UK payroll manager working for OpenView Security right now, which is the largest privately owned security company in the UK. I also started my career in payroll accidentally 12 years ago. And I've just been building myself up, hopefully, to get onto a global platform.
Amazing. Great to hear from you all. Just a note for the audience that you can ask questions at any time by messaging in the chat below. We'll also have polls running, so we'd love to hear your thoughts there. But let's jump right in. I just wanted to start by looking at like what is actually going on with payroll fragmentation. Like, what is the issue here? You know, payroll data is often spread across these different platforms. Like, why is this happening? And I'd love to start with you, Soumya, from the technical perspective.
When we really look at payroll systems, from payroll perspective, the word integrations, right, is so often misunderstood by people. People assume integrations is a very simple data dump from one software to another. Why is there this misconception? Because today, majority of the companies actually manage payroll data across multiple systems. They have an HR platform. They have various finance tools that give them insights. They also deal with local payroll vendors and, of course, very complex regulatory systems out there. However, in reality, if you were to look at a true payroll integration, right, it is actually a legal and a finance handshake, if you think about it. Assume there's an HR event, right? Someone got promoted in your organization. How do you truly translate that event into a beautiful statutory calculation without a human being having to touch a spreadsheet? So that is what we are really dealing with here. Payroll integration becomes very difficult because this truly sits at the heart of various very, very rigid tax laws. The data is extremely sensitive, and we need to ensure that it is extremely secure. And because there are so many systems involved, the way the organizations have brought these systems together is like a wild game of Jenga out there. So there is a lot of legacy technology that is also involved, unlike most new software. So because they manage payroll this way, integrating these systems properly becomes very difficult because there are 3 factors that come in here, right? The first one, the way I call it is, I talk about this to my teams often, it is actually the data language barrier. this is incompatible field names, incompatible data formats that require custom fixes when you move data from one system to another. Of course, compliance in one country is hard. Imagine that in like so many countries out there. Global compliance is truly like a corn maze, if you know what I mean. Super overwhelming for people, constantly changing. And managing this is also a technical overhead for most companies. And finally, I will just repeat the same thing because repetition does not ruin the prayer. Legacy systems versus cloud systems. Older systems lack the modern real-time APIs that are required. There's a lot of slow, incompatible updates that happen. Now, why is all of this very important and high stakes? Because any failure in payroll world is truly high stakes. Payroll is not a gray area. It's truly black and white and demands perfection to avoid fines, and because the name of the game is maintaining trust to maintain the trust. While, yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Thank you for the comprehensive answer there, Soumya. Russell, I'd actually like to jump to you next. What's the broader conversation around payroll integration right now, and kind of how is that evolving? How does it impact the board?
So it definitely changes over time. So I think, if you look at the last 5-10 years, integrations have gone from a nice to have. When companies are looking for new software, new solutions, new services, integrations have gone from a nice to have to a must have. And one of the reasons behind this is, as Soumya touched on, payroll is so important to every organization's operations that simple mistakes, we're in the year 2026, we shouldn't be having simple manual input kind of mistakes happening in organizations. So to have that data, some of the challenges have been, again, as Soumya touched on, legacy systems, different systems, and the way that they can integrate, but the technology with regards to APIs, with regards to different kind of software that's able to transmit and transform the data from one system to another, is enabling people to be more accurate, to be more timely, to give better reporting, better analysis on your payroll. So as I said, overall, I'd say it's gone from a nice to have to a must have with organizations.
That makes sense for sure. And then Amy, I'd love to hear from your side, kind of like in the day-to-day, like where is this data fragmentation showing up and what are like the problems that it's creating?
Yeah, for me, especially day-to-day, it shows up mainly in the payroll preparation stage where we're trying to collect all this data from different systems across HR systems, finance systems, and we're trying to collate all that information into one sheet. And that's where your manual input comes in, and you're going to have to re-input data, manually recheck what's been inputted already and change that if necessary, or even go and ask the managers or anything like that if this data is actually correct. What's the data integrity of it? So that's a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of changes across spreadsheets, trying to consolidate that into one. And it's really, really difficult, especially that means manual checks. There's no automation involved. So the real challenge is mainly operational efficiency, where payroll is the final checkpoint. There's nothing after us. We are the endpoint for that check. And that translates into financial, regulatory, reputational for the organization.
One more factor I thought of there as well is one challenge that has always technically been there with regards to integrations is legislation. As anyone in the industry knows, legislation changes very quickly. And when you're looking at, Europe, for example, you're looking at 27 different sets of legislation. And when those changes are happening in individual systems, especially if you're working, as we're talking about now, on a kind of global international scale, to get those changes across from the HR system into the payroll system, into the finance systems, it has previously presented huge challenges for any kind of integration capacity. But nowadays, as I said, with the advances in the technology, it's become more and more important, and it is more and more accessible to have these integrations.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think it'd be great to kind of go into more depth on what are the risks of not having everything integrated. I know we touched on some things there. But yeah, I'd love to hear more from you, Amy. Like, what is the actual impact when payroll systems don't integrate properly, like on a time sink level, cost level, everything?
If it really comes down to it, it's the pay slip and what goes through to the employee's pay. So that means it could translate into underpayments mainly, which is your real issue. And then, like Swamia said, that's employees' trust.
Because you're also affecting people's, you know, a lot of our employees are you know, in times of it's not an easy world out there, and you could be affecting other things for that employee, such as their rent, such as their taxes, such as their benefits that they're receiving. So it does have a real impact if we're doing things wrong, if just because of human error, because we're mistyping things, just because, you know, the system's not picking things up that it should pick up. So you're absolutely right, Amy. There is a huge risk in not having integrations. Because that risk translates to incorrect pay slips and unhappy employees.
Yeah, as well as compliance issues and, you know, the fact that you have to do the reporting after the pay slips goes out.
Yeah, 100%. Russell, can you touch a little more on like what are some of the mistakes you see like organizations making around payroll integrations and like what the impact of this is?
Sure. So I think a lot of companies, when they decide to make a change in their software, obviously, you know, companies and organizations tend to be forced to make a change, whether that's because of cost cutting, for example, or they have an unhappy experience with a vendor and they want to make a change. They'll look at what's on the market, and people with perhaps who don't do this very often will think about what was right 10 years ago and think that their only option is to go with one provider that does everything, the finance, the HR, the payroll, everything all in one. Generally, you know, some organizations are very good at that, but then some organizations, and I won't name any names on this call, but some organizations, the large international ones, they'll put all of their R&D research budget into either the HR system or the payroll system or the finance system, and the other things are just things that are stuck on the side. So, you know, getting everything from one organization is no longer required, right? With the advances in the technology of integrations, you can afford to look around and find the best in breed, the best in each field that is the best for you. So integrations have made that possible, and the advance in the integrations technology, open API and everything like that has made it possible to be able to have, you know, a lot of different things running at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Soumya, could you touch on that from kind of Multiplier's perspective? Like how do we approach that best in class versus all-in-one topic?
See, even before we go into how we do it at Multiplier, I was just listening to Russell and Amy. I'm a huge sucker for reports. I love reading a lot of these studies just to understand what's really happening out there. And a lot of things that we do at Multiplier is so steeped in customer centricity. We call it customer love. So studies have shown, this is as recent as November 2025. So last year went by in a blur. So 1 out of every 2 organization which has a global workforce, I'm not even talking about like 10, 20 countries. Even if you were to just have 2 countries or 3 countries out there, 1 out of every 2 organizations have paid at least some kind of penalty in the last 1 year because their systems were not truly connected. Now, that's what we're talking about, 1 out of 2. The second thing that I also noticed is, again, it's a very similar statistic. If you really think about it, when you have so many global teams and a global team and so many systems that need to come together, automatically the time that your team spends on ensuring that data is accurate, which Amy touched upon in the beginning, at the preparation stage is so huge, it leads to a lot of frustration in people. Oh, why can't this data just come in? Why do I have to key in the same data twice, once in my HRIS and once for Multiplier to consume? Or why do I have to key in the same data that was output from Multiplier into my HRIS system to ensure, or even my accounting, like they could be using Xero, they could be using QuickBooks. Why do I really need to key in all of this? So we hear this, and what we do at Multiplier is we offer a seamless connection between your HRIS system, your financial systems. We have great integrations with our various compliance regulatory bodies. So if we were to really look at how the flow works, is we do not claim to be a full stack company out there. The only three things we want to do absolutely well is payroll, payments, and compliance. That's it. We are a universal adapter. You bring any HR system out there. We promise that we will ingest your data, and okay, HR system is just one aspect of it. Time, expenses. You bring any of these systems, we will ensure that your data is ingested onto our platform without you requiring to key in anything. And then we use that data to process payroll for you, provide output, which can now flow back into your HRIS systems and also in a reconcilable format for your finance systems. So that's what we do here at Multiplier when it comes to these integrations.
Great. Yeah, it's great to hear that. I think that it would be good to go into more detail now on, what does this world look like where everything is better integrated? What can be the great outcomes that happen when that is the case? And now that we've already touched on like the negative impacts. So Amy, I'd love to start with you. Like when payroll is integrated with HR and finance, how does that change your day-to-day decision making, and in what areas?
It would be amazing, because I think it would completely transform payroll into being reactive to proactive, where, before, if they're not integrated, we said that you spend a huge amount of time reconciling the data across the different platforms, whereas if they're integrated, that time goes and you have more time to spend on data analysis. You can actually give more insight of what the payroll is achieving. What is the headcount? What's the cost per person in this area, in this country? Instead of, oh, hang on, my pay is not right. You need to go and correct that after month end. There's a lot of questions, or run an off cycle. But instead, you can actually take this data to leadership with your new insights, say, because you have more time on your hands. It leads to, you can focus more on the analysis and process improvement instead of wasting time doing the same thing on a monthly basis.
Yeah, 100%. I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, Russell. Like how are leading organizations using integrated payroll data to drive better workforce planning and everything?
So one point I would add to that, and Amy's done a good job there of explaining it, but one point to add that we're hot on, especially in the UK at the moment, is making payroll a more strategic part of the organization. So rather than being someone that just punches numbers and provides output, we can actually provide key kind of reporting metrics and data to senior leadership and to explain, to the direction that the company's going in terms of the finance. So and obviously there's the old question, where does payroll sit? Is it HR, is it finance, or is it its own thing? And now, having integrations and having, taken away a lot of the manual double entry that we've been used to in the last 20, 30 years, we can actually become more of a strategic partner to the senior leadership and to really bring kind of our role into the 21st century.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Soumya, from your end, like, it would be good to hear about what you think some of the benefits of this, improved integration are, and maybe also what some of the insights people can access through Multiplier's global payroll platform are too.
I think Russell and Amy, they covered most of the benefits. So I will say amen to each and every one of them, because they are very crucial. And I will also just briefly touch upon why it is so crucial now, repeating it, because the way we are looking at payroll now has drastically changed from the way organizations looked at payroll, not even 25 years back, like say 5 years back. The way organizations want to approach payroll, their global talent is drastically different. They do not look at it as just a cost, they look at it as an investment. So it is very important that payroll now, like Russell pointed out, becomes a true partner versus a chore that most companies used to look at it in the past. Now, coming to what kind of insights one could get from Multiplier's platform itself, we truly believe in being a strategic partner to our customers instead of being a chore. So that is the very first thing that we look at. Now, our platform has been designed to work seamlessly, which it is globally complete, it is compliant for close to 150 countries, and we transform all this data into very powerful business insights for our customers. The very first one, right? We have CFOs, we have CHROs. What do they truly care about? The very first thing is, what is the true cost of my global talent? I'm expanding. I have hired more workers globally. What does it truly mean to have this global workforce? Today, most systems actually show like a gross salary, but what we do is we offer total cost of employment breakdown, and the CFO can actually, compare like what is the actual cost of, say, hiring a senior engineer in, say, Poland versus having one in Vietnam. We also include all those hidden statutory overheads so that the leaders are able to make better hiring and budgeting decisions. The second kind of insights that we actually offer on our platform is multi-country variance and trend analysis. We started off with trust. Each and every one of us said trust is paramount in payroll. Surprises are great only when it comes to birthday parties, gifts. That's it. In payroll, nobody likes surprises. We seek stability, transparency, and thoroughness. So what we do is we offer great multi-country variance and trend analysis on our platform. Now, it's not a single country. Most software offer this at a single country level. But what we understand is consolidation is important. We are talking so much about payroll integrations. Makes no sense if I give the customer like 5 different reports and tell them, you know what, merge them and you'll have the answer by end of day 2. That's not what customers want. We ensure that we merge all this information and we provide them a beautiful view of all the countries that they operate in and help them determine the variance. Finally, real-time statutory compliance health. Like I started off, 1 out of every 2 organizations has paid some kind of penalty in the past. Customers are constantly paranoid, for the lack of a better word, about, am I compliant? Will I be levied a fine? I'm using this provider, but are they doing it right? It's a constant ticking time bomb in their mind. So we want to ensure that our customers feel extremely confident about what they have signed up for and ensuring that they have a real-time view into their compliance and statutory health. So we offer those insights as well across all the countries that we manage payroll for. Of course, there are a lot of other insights that one could gather, but these 3 seem to be the most important ones in my mind.
That makes sense. Thank you, Samya. I wondered if any of you had anything to say about how payroll integrations could feed into this wider conversation around pay transparency with this. I know we have like the EU pay transparency laws coming into effect this year. Like, is there something to be said for having everything integrated and set up properly to help you prepare for that?
Admittedly, I only work at the moment. I only work on the UK, so we aren't too. It's not too familiar with us, but at the same time, I have heard a lot, and having the integrations there that work and that are trusted will allow payroll teams and HR teams to have more control over what's going on within their payroll department, and more transparency comes as a natural result of that, for sure.
Great, thank you, Russell. Soumya, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more. You gave a great overview about Multiplier and everything that we can offer. Just love to hear from, you know, a technical perspective, should companies be looking out for, like, when they are looking for a payroll partner that integrates well?
That's a very great question. And I think when companies scout for a payroll provider, it no longer is a vague term. Like when we think integrations, they're no longer seeking vague answers. They want something super concrete and something that they can see, right? Let me flip the narrative in the reverse way from a customer's perspective. Say you're coming to a payroll provider and you're trying to understand what integration really means. And if you're the CFO or CHRO, what are some of the key questions that you could potentially be asking, right? The very first one is, you know, who manages risk? Because majority of the payroll providers out there, while they say, hey, we are a global payroll company, don't necessarily own the risk themselves. Majority of them operate in an aggregator model. So the very first crucial question to ask and understand is, who owns the risk? While of course the payroll provider is absolutely liable, but there is also a sense of having outsourced the risk to a local team for a majority of these scenarios. So that's the very first question that anybody should be asking out there. I think the second one that is very crucial for most people to understand is, you know, how much of your APIs or, how much of your tech or SDKs are truly documented and available out there in public. Because a lot of times people or most software providers say, hey, we offer great integrations and they onboard customers, but you do not have these documentation out there live. What it truly means is there's a lot that's happening under the hood. It's like the platform is now a facade and there are people, the very set of people you wanted to avoid as part of integrations, who are doing this for you behind the scenes. Is it real time? What? Not. Is it not error prone? It is very error prone. So that's the very important question that one should be asking about API documentation. And finally, I think what's also very crucial is truly understanding the technicalities of the data language itself, right? It has to truly move beyond just, like name syncing. That's what we started off with. It's not a simple field to field mapping. Providers will say, hey, we will offer field to field mapping. But what we are truly seeking is the ability to transform that and convert that into a solid legal and a financial handshake. So I would say asking these three questions: who owns the risk? Are you aggregator or is it wholly owned by you? Are your APIs and documentation like out there in public, how detailed they are? And finally, truly understanding that it's not a simple data mapping or a data sync, but rather a true legal and a financial handshake goes a really long way.
Great answer. Thank you, Soumya. Russell, I'd love to hear if there's anything you would add from that you typically advise, people to look out for in their payroll solution.
I agree with what Soumya said about the models and the aggregator models as well, and I get that totally, because having worked for a couple of global payroll organizations, sometimes global doesn't really mean global. It means very local but connected loosely. And that's fine, because again, going back to the legislation side of things, it's very, very difficult. You can't make it is almost impossible to make a payroll system that would do the legislation in Spain and the legislation in Thailand, for example. They're just so different that getting us one single system is very, very difficult that will do everything. So quite often, using local companies that have the local knowledge, that have the local experience, local language often, it is important. And, having that having integrations where you've got so many different things has always been a challenge in the past, but nowadays with the rate of improvement in software, improvement in the integration software as well, it's never been a better time to be able to get things integrated, to get things working. In terms of what companies looking out for, obviously, whilst we're talking about having integrations, the other things to look out for if you are looking around is still obviously data security, is still ensuring that the people that you're working with have the correct qualifications, the correct certifications to ensure that your data is handled correctly and appropriately and securely.
Amazing. Thanks, Russell. Amy, anything from you? Anything that you look up for in kind of day-to-day experience with the payroll software that you're using?
I mean, I think Russell pointed this out, but if there was if it was able to use payroll data directly to feed into statutory reporting and tax submissions to reduce any errors, or even what Samia was saying about the penalties, if it was to reduce any of those risks, then that would definitely be something worth noting for. And especially to get a clear picture of global labour and workforce expenses, any sort of system that kind of can get all of that together would be brilliant.
I think just to add on to that, I think with so many changing laws, a lot of countries in the EU region or even in LATAM, they seek immediate, reconciliation. It's no longer about, okay, let me process payroll today, and then a quarter later I will file. Systems these days require you to submit data instantaneously. So I think there's a lot of that too that forces stronger and better integrations. I was just thinking what Russell and Amy were talking about, especially statutory reporting, etc. I think now it's become super mandatory in so many countries. So I think there's only one way: better integrations.
Yeah, great. I would love to briefly touch on AI, just because I know it's a huge conversation at the moment. I know, maybe it doesn't fully come into this topic, but Samia, would you have anything to add there?
While we can talk about AI in general, because AI in payroll and integrations is huge, I do want to apply multiplier lens. What are we doing to, stay very relevant? We do not really look at AI as a one-stop shop, a magic wand that comes in and says, voila, everything's fixed, and there you go. That's not what we look at. We truly want to be extremely, I keep repeating this, customer-centric. We want to ensure that we use AI to be able to offer the right kind of strategic insights to ensure our customers are taken well care of, and AI becomes a collaborator in this scenario and not necessarily a one fix solution. So what we are doing at Multiplier is when it comes to payroll integrations itself, we have something we call as bring your own data. So we know today that customers we've been talking about this at the top of the hour so much. We have many systems. Customers have data in so many different formats. And one of the biggest barriers to switching a payroll provider is, if it ain't broken, why should we be truly fixing it? Lethargy is the biggest barrier. I don't want it is super scary, right? I have years and years worth of payroll data. What if something goes wrong? How will I truly ensure that there are no gaps? Everything moves from my current system to the next provider. So what we want to ensure is we want to use AI where you bring your own data and we are able to map that data onto our systems easily. When you bring this data, sometimes what we've realized is a lot of our customers might not be using standard softwares. They could have just used manual spreadsheets, or they could have used a provider so local or an accountant who's been doing this. So there could be a lot of errors in the data that they bring over to us. It's very crucial for us to detect these issues. we do that. So once the data comes in, we look at the current year's payroll history and detect the anomalies in that. We detect the variances in that, and we fix it. When I say fix it, we take the approach of review, and not necessarily I will do it automatically for you. We offer the customer the ability to review, and then we ensure once they review it, the data really flows into our systems. There's a lot more we do in terms of fraud detection. There's a lot more we do in terms of payments, etc. But I feel just from the perspective of integrations, this is a very crucial. These are the two very crucial things that we do.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, that's perfect. Amy, Russell, any thoughts to add on this kind of AI integrations topic?
Yeah, definitely. I think the use of AI is really blown up in the last few years, and I think a lot of people are worried that it would replace their jobs. But I think for payroll, that's not a possibility. I don't think AI would not be replacing any payroll professional. I think it's more about strengthening the data and the accuracy, the control, and trying to get the visibility right across the different systems. I personally use it for anomaly detection. So if there's any kind of, especially with my formulas, I don't know if you guys use formulas in payroll in your spreadsheets, but I'm very big on formulas. And for me, if a formula is not working, I can put it into AI and check why is it not working, what's it picking up instead, and very quickly it can detect any kind of anomaly for me. And so that makes my job a lot less shorter than without the use of AI.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at AI just as like final, as we wrap everything up, we look to the future and what payroll systems could look like and integrations could look like. Any final thoughts from any of you on that and on this topic as a whole? Like where could we be this time next year when it comes to properly integrated payroll systems? Let's start with you, Russell.
No, as I said, going through this, for me, a hot topic at the moment is about making payroll a more strategic part of the organization, and I believe that integrations and having working tested excellent integrations and having whatever part AI plays in that as well, it's not to be confused with automation, because automation is a different thing to AI, which a lot of people don't fully always know. But if you have these things in your armory, then you're going to be in a much better position going forwards, where you're going to be more strategic, a more valued resource than just than perhaps we were 10-15 years ago.
100%. Yeah. Soumya, would you like to add anything there?
Not much, to be very honest. I think we had a really rich conversation. It would be me just summarizing what we spoke about. But I think especially the part where you spoke about where do you see this next year, if the three of us were to be talking about the same topic next year, I think it would be even more been there, done that for majority of the use cases that we are talking about, because right now there are a few scenarios where the solutions are a bit gray. But a year from now, with so many advancements that are happening out there, it's so easy to build things faster, to Russell's point, automate, etc. But truly use AI to transform so many routine jobs into easily automated workflows. I think there's going to be ample proof in more which is more accessible to an average payroll manager. When I say, of course, all payroll managers are superheroes. That's very important to put it out there. What I'm saying is, even someone who is very early career will be able to, explore and truly get the benefits of the payroll product that they are using in a much bigger way than they are today. So I'll say we would have been there, we would have done that. We would be talking about experiments we ran what worked, what didn't, and how did we pivot. And there'll be ample proof that integrations are now truly moving into an era where they are seamless, because a lot of work would have gone in to make these systems talk to each other better. So yeah.
Great answer. Thank you, Soumya. Any final thoughts from you, Amy?
Before I look ahead, I must say, before maybe 5-10 years ago, payroll was definitely a back office function. It used to just be, I used to sit either with finance or HR, and now I finally do have my own seat at the table. And I do think looking forward, it will be a lot more strategic, like Russell said. I think a lot of companies realize the impact of it very soon. And definitely with AI coming, I think it will play a bigger role with compliance and predictive compliance even. I can see AI doing that with monitoring regulations and maybe helping organizations just stay ahead of the evolving requirements that happen all the time, particularly in multi-country environments.
That's actually lovely when you spoke about predictive compliance. We at Multiplier are actually doing something about this. Very early experiences, maybe a year from now. We might be talking, like I said, okay, we've been there, we've done that. Okay, these are the learnings we had. Thank you for touching upon that.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Very exciting times. And thank you all so much for joining this webinar, and thank you to our wonderful speakers. If you keep an eye on your email inbox, you will be receiving the replay link if you want to rewatch anything. Of course, you can also book a demo through the emails as well.